heard our announcement this morning from Ireland.
What reaction have you been getting?
After due consideration and a lot of advice from the principals and the Troika and certain European colleagues, we decided it was in the best interest of the country not to look for a precautionary programme. We think that the time is now right for exiting the programme, and that may not always be so. We think the time is right because we have a budget behind us which signals a deficit target less than what's in the programme. We're coming up to the anniversary of the programme, and the purpose of the programme and the 260 actions we took over 3 years was actually to exit the programme, meaning that the purpose of the programme was to restore Ireland to normalcy, so that we would be a normal Eurozone country making our decisions in government and funding ourselves on the markets. Now, it's a very benign time internationally as well. Europe is very calm at the moment. Ireland is growing very strongly again. Our markets are at an all-time low. Our secondary market 10-year bond was at 352 at lunchtime. It didn't move even 1 basis point on the announcement. And of course, the decision by the European Central Bank to reduce interest rates has been helpful as well. Now, if we took a precautionary programme, we would have to make the decision we made today next year. And I don't know what things will be like next November, but I have no guarantee that it will be as benign as it is now. So our reasons are, it's the right time to do it. We're very well positioned at the moment. The purpose of the programme was eventually to get out, in the sense that we had restored the economy and we could manage our affairs and fund ourselves in the market. So that's why.
Did you consult with the ECB last night before making this decision?
I consulted with the ECB several weeks ago. I knew what their position was, and they made it quite clear that it was a decision for the Irish government and they would support whichever way we went. It has always been finely balanced, but this morning I spoke to Mario Draghi, and I spoke to Olli Rehn, and I spoke to Christine Lagarde. Ollie and Mario will be at the meetings today and tomorrow. Christine won't be, but I have the full support, and they'll be all issuing statements, if they haven't done so already, later in the afternoon, expressing their strong support for the decision and their continuing support for Ireland.
What was the deciding factor in your decision?
The deciding factor was that the time is now right. That's the deciding factor. You have seen how Europe has developed over the last 3 years while we were in the programme. It can get rocky at times in Europe, and things that over which one has no control elsewhere in the Eurozone can affect one's decisions. But it's a very good time now, because, as I say, there's a benign window of opportunity which I see stretching out into the new year, and we're very confident that we'll be able to fund ourselves in the market. Secondly, we have over 20 billion in cash reserves, and that funds us into 2015. So if we took a precautionary programme, it would be quite clear that we wouldn't need to access it in 2014. So then the consideration would be, will we take it so that we will have the option of extending it? Now, that's a very bad reason for going into a precautionary programme when we don't need it for the 12 months operational period of the programme.
Could you possibly at the end of next year get one at that point? Has that been discussed?
No, we're not in that space at all. We'll fully fund ourselves. Our total funding for next year, according to the NTMA, depending on circumstances and what we decide to pre-fund, is somewhere between 6 and 10 billion, and we have reserves of over 20. So we don't have to borrow on the markets next year. But of course our intention would be to go back into the markets probably late January or early February, and to get some more money on the markets.
Minister, I understand from colleagues in Dublin that yields have fallen this morning on news of this. Do you see that as a vote of confidence? And secondly, you spoke about unacceptable conditions being imposed if we took a credit line. What might those conditions have been?
Well, I've been travelling out, so I'm not too sure how yields were going. But the briefing I got when I got off the plane was that there was no upward movement in yields this morning, and that this had passed in the markets without any concern. The conditions, I never asked for a precautionary programme. What I did was took advice from the principals of the Troika and from individual finance ministers. And my officials were in contact with every treasury across the Eurozone. So we knew where we stood, but we never got into the space of what conditions might attach.
How long do you think it will be before the ordinary person in Ireland, having such a huge debt to repay, will feel that they're getting back to normal, getting back to a growth situation?
Well, we went into a programme because we weren't able to manage our own affairs. The previous government failed to provide credit in the markets, so there was no choice but to go into a programme. The conditions for getting inexpensive money from Europe and the IMF were all the conditions that attached, and we fulfilled 260 of them. So we're in a space now where the economy is growing again, and where 3,000 jobs a month net are being created in Ireland, and we're in a much better space than we were. But it's not over. The transfer is a transfer of responsibility from the programme to the Irish government, and the kind of policies we're pursuing to make sure we have a strong and growing economy will continue to be pursued, but under the direction of the Irish government rather than under the direction of the Troika.